So a very warm welcome to Mandy, Mother for Life. I came across Mandy last year and was immediately just very interested in the circle work that she does. Can you tell us, Mandy, where you are right now?
I'm sitting in my kitchen in Birmingham, in the UK, Birmingham, and the sun is shining. It's a lovely day here, which is nice. It makes a change.
It's sunny here as well. We've got beautiful blue sky.
Yeah, likewise, it's lovely.
And I thought we would do a check-in because we both host circles, and check-ins can be a really powerful part of it, where we just stop and pause. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, in terms of just how I'm feeling today.
Yeah, just what's alive for you right now, how you're feeling.
Yeah, I think today I was quite anxious first thing this morning because it feels like a busy day, but I always ground myself and just take it one thing at a time, do the next thing on the list and then get through it. And I feel good now. I feel like I've been to the gym, like we said. So I've done my exercise. I'm always much better when I've got those endorphins going. I've been outside for a little bit, which really helps. And I think probably helped by the fact that I have a facial booked this afternoon. It's making me feel nice and grounded. So yes, I don't run circles usually on a Thursday and a Friday. So they're my kind of catch-up days. So I quite enjoy the space that they create. And I've got much better in my own self-care since I've been guiding other people. My own self-care is really important. So my monthly facial is high up on my list of good things to do. So the fact I've got that to look forward to today is really helping me feel grounded and looking forward to the weekend. So yeah, I'm pretty good today. It's been a bit of a bumpy week, if I'm honest. Monday wasn't a great day. Just the ups and downs of life and how I feel. But yeah, today I'm nicely grounded. How about you?
Yeah, I'm sort of feeling feeling connection. There are lots of parallels in what you were saying. I think you're right. When you run circles, you do start to really pay attention to your self-care. So I also went to the gym this morning and I got reflexology booked. Yay!
Brilliant. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, because it has been a really busy week juggling lots of things, and so I know I have to put in the diary, you know, I have to schedule it in, and it's as important as any meeting or anything like that. So because I, you know, have put those things in, I feel for some reason an image of swimming came up. And I just feel like I'm sort of, on the surface, and I'm doing good, comfortable strokes, and I'm moving. I'm not sort of flailing. So that's kind of the image that came to mind.
Nice. Yeah. I don't know about you, but whenever I have reflexology, I always fall asleep.
Yeah, although I've become very good friends with my reflexologist, so we have to be careful not to chat.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that. Oh, we've both got nice things to look forward to today, which is lovely.
So I would love to hear, we always ask the same 4 questions, and the first one is, what were you like as a girl? So I'm thinking around 10 years old, but it depends what stands out for you.
No, that's a good age. So I grew up in a small village and I rode. So my thing was horse riding. And about the age of 10, so I used to ride within the village. We luckily had a stables in the village. And about the age of 10 or 11, I started to ride at a local farm because they had a daughter a little bit older than me and a son a little bit younger. So I slotted in nicely in between for the horses. So 10, 11-year-old me would have been up out of bed early in the morning with all my stuff, traipsing off to the farm in those days when you could get on your bike and cycle anywhere or even walk the mile and a half it probably was. And that's where I'd be with the horses, with the other animals, walking the fields, out riding, mucking out, doing whatever you needed to on a farm. That was kind of my second family, where I would, have my breakfast, dinner and tea there. And in school holidays, we'd stay over and camp and things like that. So I was very much outdoorsy. Horses were my best friends. I have a very connection with horses, chickens and cats for some bizarre reason. So that's how you'd have found me. I was very much, I guess I was a tomboy, but I like the physical aspects, and I love the freedom of being on a horse and just going out riding and just watching the world and feeling that connection of the horse underneath you and that understanding that you have with them. That was just magical. I mean, I feel very, very lucky. I don't ride at all now, and I stopped when I was about 15, 16, but really formed me as a human and a child. To have that freedom and that connection with another being was incredibly important to me at that time.
Yeah, I'm really hearing the physicality, that sense of freedom and the connection. Yeah. So how was it at school when you were that kind of age?
School, I mean, I went to the local primary school, and then when I went to secondary school, we had an 11 plus system where I came from. So I went to one school and most of my friends went to another school. So that was quite a difficult transition. And our village school took children in from other villages. So although I had friends at my new school from my old school, they didn't live in the same village as me. So that was quite an alienating time for me for a little while before I established myself back in my new school. When I was a little bit older, and I was 12, I had my tonsils out. So just as I started secondary school, I had my tonsils removed. So I missed like 3 weeks of school when everyone was making those new friendships and learning the teachers and that kind of thing. So missing that was really difficult, actually, because it doesn't just take you those 3 weeks you missed to settle back in. It takes you quite a long time to form friendships with new people when they've already formed those friendships because you weren't there. So that was quite tricky for me. And I also remember having some very bad dreams around the time I had my tonsils removed, the operation. So that was quite difficult. It took me probably the whole of my first year at secondary school to feel settled in. That those 3 weeks had quite an impact on me. You know, I enjoyed school. I wasn't particularly academic. I did the bare minimum because as soon as I got home, I went out riding. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah. And a year is a long time at that age, isn't it? Yeah. So with your personality, would you say that you were fairly outgoing or reserved?
I would say that in my own environment, I'm outgoing. So people probably think I'm quite extrovert, but inside I'm panicking like mad. I'm like the classic swan. On the surface, it looks like it's okay, but underneath everything's just kicking away and panicking. So I'd probably say I'm an introverted extrovert.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I look like I know what I'm doing on the outside and I look confident, but inside there's a very small little girl in there going, oh, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Just believe. But I also learned at quite a young age, if I didn't push myself out of my comfort zone, I would miss out on life. You know, my mum would always say, oh, when we went to parties, Mandy, you're always the one that clung to my leg, whereas your younger sister would be out there in the middle of everything. And then I guess at some point I realized I didn't want to be the observer for the whole of my life. I wanted to get in there and live my life. And that did mean taking a deep breath and facing challenges that were uncomfortable and a little bit scary. But I've made it through all of them. And the more you do, the easier it gets. So I'm definitely someone who doesn't want to miss out on life.
Yeah, I hear you, because I think people maybe who remember me from primary school would be very surprised that, you know, then going to conferences, speaking in front of hundreds of people and things like that. I think for me it's that sort of introvert parts is I feel really comfortable in friendships where we're meeting one-to-one and we can go into the depths of something. And I've realized that that's okay. That's just what I prefer, you know.
Yeah.
I've not ever really been so much of a big group person, because I just feel that it can move to a more superficial level. And that's the beauty of a circle. You can actually have quite a lot of people, but because it's held, the different quality can actually come through.
Yeah.
So I wondered, if you can tell us that sort of journey to how you came to hold circles, because you were in law, weren't you? So you were in a sort of male-dominated environment, and now you're working day in, day out with mainly women, it sounds like.
Yes, and I think people who know me from my law time would be very surprised at what I'm doing now, probably. but I think the introvert in me has been able to come out in a way that works for me and other people. So yeah, I was a lawyer, then I had 2 daughters, and I worked until my youngest was 4, so my eldest was 8, and then I stopped and I trained as a yoga teacher. So I started doing pregnancy and postnatal yoga. I do baby massage as well, and I do coaching for mums. But I was noticing that within the classes, the conversation space was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and was actually squeezing out the doing of the yoga or the massage. So I decided just to say, right, I'm going to do circles, and there might be some movement involved, there might be some loving touch, but mainly it's the conversational space, because that's what mums needed, and that's what I needed as a mum. So it was a journey where I followed my heart and my intuition at the end of the day, and thought, this is what mums really need, and this is what I love doing, and I can hold that space, and I do listen, and I know how healing it is to bring women together in spaces where they can be themselves without worrying about what anyone's going to say or anyone's going to think. And transforming lives in that way is amazing, and I feel very privileged to be able to do it.
Do you think there are things from being a lawyer that helped you develop the capacity to hold space? Are there things from that time, that work?
It certainly helped me from a business perspective. You know, there's lots of things that I'm aware of and lots of skills. And I would always notice, even when I was a lawyer, I didn't feel the need to fill a space in a meeting, which is interesting, because when I have conversations with people that I'm uncomfortable with, my husband would say, oh, you're a classic space filler, Mandy. You always have to fill a silence. But in a circle environment or in a meeting environment, I never felt the need to do that, because it's in that moment of extra space that people say something, because your subconscious mind has already got it. It just hasn't had the chance to transfer through to your conscious mind, and you speak it out. And normally the moments pass because someone else is talking. So I would notice that actually, if you, in a negotiating meeting, for example, I was a real estate lawyer, if you say nothing, the other side would often give something away because they'd want to fill the space. So yes, I did in that context.
And I imagine it also creates a very good listener. As a lawyer, you're listening for the detail.
Yeah, and also as a lawyer, you want to build relationships with your clients as well. So when you actually listen and pay interest to them as an individual, as opposed to just the client, it cements that relationship, and it makes it much nicer to work together on that basis.
And you were mentioning to me that you now run training, so other people can learn how to facilitate these circles.
Yes.
How is that manifested? It's sort of because that's a whole nother level of holding space, isn't it, when you're training people?
Yeah, well, because I'd been doing it for quite a long time, a couple of the mums that were in my circles said, well, could I learn to do this? Because I'd like to do it for other mums. I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I can teach you if you want me to. And then there were some doula groups that I was in, and lots of doulas were talking about, well, actually, I want to be able to make a different impact. I want to work on a different level with the mums, because, you know, it's kind of, I see them for a little while, but then they're gone and they're not meeting other mums when they're with me. It's just me and the mum. So I thought, well, I'm sure I could put something together. So then it was just a case of, right, come on, Mandy, you're going to write this program. So I wrote it, and I didn't want to just have it as a standalone course. I wanted to be able to then, everyone that's within the program becomes a circle in themselves, so that we support each other on our journey. So it's kind of, you get the online resources, but then I meet with the people for the first kind of 3 months every other week when they do the program, and then there's the option to fall into a monthly circle, whereas so we hold each other, and lots of people in it have become really good friends, you know, and we share everything, personally, professionally, what's gone on that day, what's happening in our lives, which has been amazing for me, and something I hoped would happen, but I wasn't sure that would happen, because I think when you're working on your own for yourself, it can be very lonely and very isolating.
And there's so much validation, isn't there, when you're able to talk about your experience and really be heard. I think it just gives you so much strength to keep doing what you love.
Yeah, and I think when you start a business, people don't always appreciate how hard it is to get, you know, the first few people to sign up, and the constant need for the messaging and the marketing, that you can be very disheartened. So yesterday was a Zoom with the people in the program. I was just like, you know, one of them was just, it's just really hard. I just feel like giving up. We're like, no, we've all been there. You just have to keep, people don't just see you once and then book on. You have to keep just pushing and staying your message and stay true. And then it's just that feeling, I'm not on my own. I have got that support. It's okay. It's okay to feel fed up and annoyed and disheartened, but don't do it on your own. You do it within a circle where you're going to be held, and you're re-energized as well, because sometimes you just need a break and permission to stop. So like I said to the lady yesterday, I said, just stop, give yourself a few days off and have a break, and then come back to it next week when you feel a bit more energized and refreshed. And we don't give ourselves permission to do that often enough. And then the other ladies were, you know, sharing their experiences, and she's like, I've got this, it's going to be okay. I just need to have a break and start again.
Be really transformational.
Yeah.
I started running the circle because I was learning more about cycle awareness, and I knew what my own experience was, but I was really intrigued to know what other people experiences were, because you know, there can be so much diversity in menstrual cycles.
Yeah.
So I started it, and it's not that that's all we ever talk about, but it's become this lens. So with the people that come often, you know, if they say to me, oh, I'm day 21, I'm like, okay, I know kind of where you're at.
Yeah.
It's like this shorthand. It's lovely. And I wondered how cycles have affected your work. So it might not be specifically a menstrual cycle, it might be seasonal, it might be circadian rhythms, daily cycle. But
I know that I work better. I have certain times of the day when I know it's not good. So, you know, 3-4 o'clock is not good for me. That's when my energy dips. So I'm very aware of that, and I'm good in the morning. And then if I don't go to bed early enough, I get a boost later on at night. So I try to go to bed around 10, half 10 before I get that energy boost. Otherwise I could be up to 1 o'clock in the morning and then exhausted the next day. So I'm really aware of my daily rhythm. And then I'm very seasonal, but I love the change of the seasons. There isn't a season I really don't like, but I like them when they're changing. I like to feel that transition. And one of my big self-care things is I run a lot. So I get to see the changing of the seasons, because I run the same routes quite often. So I get to see that route, you know, or the daffodils are springing again, and then they've been replaced with the something else, and then the blackberries are coming out, and you know, that's lovely for me. So I'm very much done by the seasons. I don't really run my circles on that basis. I mean, I'm really interested in the moon, but I don't know enough about it yet. I mean, I'm aware of the waxing and the waning, and I set intentions around the moon, but I haven't feel like personally I have the expertise yet to run moon circles. I mean, it's something I'd love to do, and I do talk, you know, I'll say to my mums, they'll go, oh, the babies are all unsettled. I go, but it's a full moon or a new moon, that's why the babies, and they'll go, oh, I haven't really thought about that. So I introduce it all the time in conversation, but I'm not an expert on cycles of the moon. But I certainly have a daily rhythm, a cycle, and a seasonal cycle. I get real boosts when the seasons are changing.
I think it's so important, isn't it? Because we are all different. And so if we can begin to see what works for us, you know, I find for my own business, then the productivity can just go through the roof, because you're not pushing against the flow. And you're that self-care piece again. And I found it fascinating what you were saying about really enjoying the transitions of the outside seasons, because I often use the model of the inner seasons when talking about the menstrual cycle. So, for example, inner winter would be when you're having your period, inner summer is ovulation, and then the other parts are there. But it's usually the transitions that are hardest for people, because you're sort of maybe got used to where you are, and then it's changing again, particularly if somebody has a very short cycle. If they go whip round in 23, 24, 25 days, like, oh, how can I be here again already? And that can be quite confronting. So interesting.
And I also know that some days if I'm not feeling, if I've planned like this is a day I need to do lots of writing, but I just don't feel it, to stop fighting it. Whereas previously I might have sat myself down and said, right, today's your writing day, you have to do it. Now I'll recognize that cyclically it's just not the right time for me. And I do get these days where I want to create loads, and then other days where I just want to shut myself away and do the kind of more straightforward routine stuff. And I'm honoring that much more than I've ever done. But I think the legal world does really leave much space for honoring much at all. And I do say to my girls, if you don't want to do it today, just don't do it. If you can let something go, let it go. Don't push through. I think certainly the generation I came from, and my mum was very much, we've just got to keep carrying on. You've just got to push through, push through. And I don't think that's very serving.
Do you feel that your girls can hear that? Because because my girls are 8 and 11, so they're not sort of at that stage of being at secondary school and having their periods. And I know a lot of mums that are very happy for their daughters to have, the main sort of heavy flow day, to have that off school, to rest as much as possible and make the rest of the week much easier. But there often seems to be resistance because they're worried about falling behind with their work, or I think that's the main reason, but also maybe a little bit of then they have to explain where were they. And
I hope they hear it. I think they do. They've never asked to have time off school, but they will ask to miss games or something if it's a heavy period day, and I'll always do them a note. And they're very upfront with telling their teacher that's what it's for. They wouldn't, they don't say pretend it's something else. So, and I've always talked very openly about their periods and their cycles, and we celebrated it when they had their first periods. And when all the kind of stuff kept coming up as, it's just awful. And Grace, my oldest, would sometimes say to Neve, I've got really bad period pain, it's awful. I would just say, don't have those conversations, because Neve's journey is going to be different to yours. It's all going to be different for everybody. So try and keep it very open and honest about the conversations that we have around it, and just genuinely ask the girls how they're feeling and what they need. If they need to slow down, can they? I mean, unfortunately, life doesn't always allow it, does it? Because it might just be something they have to do, and it happens to be when they're having their period, and that they like to say they don't want to miss school, they don't want to not go out with their friends. But I'm much more conscious of it than certainly I received from my mom, who was just like, it's awful, you've just got to get on with life, which I think gave me a very negative attitude of what our cycles were for.
And I think half of it is the awareness. You might think I could really do with not having to do X, Y, or Z, but I do, but I will later on rest, or I will later on have a nice long bath. And so it's, I guess in that way you're honouring your experience, even if you can't act on it straight away.
Yes, but at least you're not just continuing to push through. You are slowing down when you can. Me having my facial, you having a reflex on today. I have one more question for you, which was about a transformational moment in your life. But this sounds like a really small thing, but it has really transformed the way I hold space for people. So in my late 20s, I got really severe eczema, like covered from my head to foot. I had about 6 weeks off work. I couldn't wear clothes. I was going to bed at night wrapped in all kinds of stuff. It was awful. So I went back to live with my mum and dad for a little while. And I was sitting in my mum's living room, and a lady from the village they lived in came into the village, and she walked into the room with my mum, and I was sitting at the chair, and this lady was probably in her 60s or 70s, but she knelt down to talk to me, to ask me how I was. So she was face to face with me. Whereas most people in that situation would stay standing and would have spoken not down to me, but they would have been looking down to me on that seat. And in that moment, I felt really seen and heard, and as if she really cared. And from that moment on, it was, I can't explain it to you. It was like, just like a light had just flashed at that moment. I was like, this woman is like an angel. She really knows how to care for people. And I feel really cared for. And I've never seen her since. It was just a one-off meeting. but it had such an impact on me that I'm really aware of our physical presence when we're holding space for people and when we're really listening to people. So whenever I can, I always get down to the eye level of whoever it is or any animal I'm with to hold that space and talk to them. So it all happened in a couple of minutes, but it has had such a huge effect on me. That's really that was transformational for me.
Yeah, and as you were talking about it, I could feel the sort of electricity over my body.
Yeah, she was an amazing. I mean, I don't know whether she's still with us. She was amazing. She really was. There was just something about her that was incredibly powerful. But that, just the way she did it just changed.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
No, it's
really special.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I wish I'd been able to tell her what an effect she'd had. Because it really was.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me and giving us a little bit of insight about who you were, who you are now. Find more about you and what you do.
So I have a website and it's motherforlife.co.uk, where all the details of the circles that I run and the training that I run as well are all on the website. And my email is mandy@motherforlife.co.uk. And if you just put Mother for Life in Instagram and Facebook, you'd find me on there as well. I'm in the usual places. But just thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. It's been really lovely talking to you. Thank you ever so much.
Likewise, I've still got a lovely feeling of connection and a glow in my chest.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.